Before we discuss the actual comic, I would like to go on a tangent. Why does more of this not exist? Seriously, in a series where people have their heads so up the arse of the lore and the story and whatnot, why is there not more licensed material that expands on the Fallout story? Given it takes 5 years at this point to have a new Fallout game, wouldn't having novels and comics hold people over until the next game comes out? Wouldn't releasing comics and novels give die-hard nerds something to talk about? The Fallout YouTubers I see rely on limited information, but they still make content out of it. Like, the games have their own standalone stories with in-game lore that is self-contained and has enough information to the player, but imagine if they started releasing comic books and novels that expand on the story. People want information on regions outside the United States. A game isn't suitable for that. So why not make a comic book miniseries called Fallout China or Fallout Russia that basically sheds light on other regions? They'd be completely disconnected from the games that take place in the United States. And they'd give more information on the world, and we wouldn't have to speculate based on limited information. And again, it would hold people over. For such a franchise focused on lore, it's baffling why Fallout has only 2 standalone comics. I thought there'd be more. And this doesn't just apply to Fallout. Why doesn't Grand Theft Auto release a comic book miniseries given after 8 years? We're now only finally getting confirmation on the next installment. If Rockstar's too lazy to make an expansion, why the hell not release a comic book to hold people over? It's an idea so great, I'm surprised they haven't done it at all. When I said Fallout had comics, that's true. The first to be released was One Man and a Crate of Puppets, released as a webcomic meant to promote Fallout 3. In case you're wondering what I thought of that comic, I thought it was okay. I think it was meant to be a stupid joke, and according to the Fallout wiki, it isn't canon. Although I take that with a grain of salt, because it seems they all categorize licensed content as non-canon, so I'd say it's debatable depending on the story. That leaves us with Fallout New Vegas All Roads. All Roads is a single-issue comic published by Dark Horse Comics, included in the collector's edition of New Vegas. I said New Vegas. All Roads serves as a prequel to Fallout New Vegas. On the Fallout wiki, it apparently isn't canon either, but I take that with a grain of salt. I think the wiki is automatically disregarding everything that's not directly made by the game developers as non-canon. The comic script was written by Chris Avellone, who is also the main writer on some of New Vegas' DLC, and a side writer from New Vegas. People usually credit him as the main writer of New Vegas Vanilla, when it's actually Josh Sawyer. All Roads, despite being a decent comic, is not as good as it could have been. Let's get into the comic and you'll find out why. The comic starts with an intro. In the aftermath of a nuclear war, humanity has struggled to survive. In the Mojave Wasteland, great tribes have taken out the trappings of civilization, building communities, towns, and even allies. But their more brutal instincts aren't so easily left behind. Benny, the guy who shot the courier in the head in the intro movie of New Vegas, and the 2 cons who accompany him, plus a dude named Chance, who is mute and looks like he belongs in a biker gang. The story basically sets up what we've all seen in New Vegas. Benny at the Tops Casino is basically setting out to find the courier and obtain the platinum chip. The story is structured in a way where you could read the comic before playing the game, and nothing is spoiled. I do think it's rather vague on things like context, and in case you're wondering, Yes Man does not show up at all. I guess Yes Man in himself was meant to be a surprise, but they could have had a spoiler warning before reading this comic. Well, point is, the cons in Red Rock Canyon are mapping out the region, including Jessup and McMurphy, and I think this was supposed to establish a bit about the world, but they didn't develop it well enough. You see, I don't think one issue was going to make for a proper prelude to the game. I think what they could have done was make multiple issues, establishing the state of each faction and major player in New Vegas. For example, this issue focuses on Benny and the cons, but why not have an issue dedicated to the NCR, or Caesar's Legion, or Mr. House, or whatever. You could all make it a connected story. Like, for example, Mr. House learns Benny is planning to ambush the courier, so he sends Victor out to intercept the ambush. Meanwhile, NCR and Legion can do something, I don't know. I'm speaking off the top of my head. But why not? This comic kind of feels like we've skipped to the end for a 5-issue miniseries. I think this comic would have been better if they had done what I suggested. According to Chris Avellone, this comic was supposed to give context for the adversaries, but I don't think that was enough. And well, I'm thinking I shouldn't be going on a tangent forever, so let's move on. What I do like about this comic is that Benny is in line with his character in the game. He's uncaring and ruthless. We see that Benny has offered a job to ambush a courier to the Khans, and in return they'll get paid. Of course, if you've played the game, you know that's not what happens. Benny betrays them and leaves them in a sticky situation. They hike out across the Mojave wasteland, and the comic mostly shows Benny walking ahead of the others. They eventually bump into a group of fiends, and Chance attacks them. The following pages are the action sequence, which results in Chance getting badly wounded. Benny gives him a substance of drugs that he does not survive after drinking it. And then we get Benny, Jessup, and McMurphy watch out at the Good Spring Cemetery, waiting for the courier to show up, and the rest is history. So that's the comic. There wasn't much to talk about. It doesn't really give any interesting insight into the story of New Vegas that you wouldn't get from playing the game itself. I think there are references to this comic in-game. For example, Chance's knife and grave can be found by the player, although I personally have never done this. I'd have to play New Vegas more, but the story was decent. I think it was a little too underdeveloped. Benny and the Khan's journey to ambush the courier wouldn't make for that much of an interesting story, given you can fill in enough pieces by playing the game. While everyone is in character, there isn't a lot of them. There's pretty much only 4 that matter. And as I said, it's like the last issue of a 5-part miniseries. The main positive is the artwork. It certainly meets the quality standard as far as I can tell, and everything looks like it's supposed to. It also has better art than the graphics of New Vegas. I like New Vegas, but let's all admit it, the graphics are horrible, even for its time. The graphics look really washed out. So, point is, would I recommend this comic? Probably not. It's clearly just a collector's edition item that doesn't tell us a lot about the game. There isn't enough in it to justify reading it. While it is way better than the Puppet Man comic, it's not that massive of an improvement. The best word to describe this comic is pointless. It doesn't really tell a story, it's more just the specifics of how we got to the intro. So overall, at best, I'll have to give this a 6.5 out of 10. Inoffensive, but bland as all hell, and doesn't add anything to the game or the Fallout universe. So with that being said, I'm JJ Plagiarisms, and until next time, what are stories but mystery boxes?